it like if you actually work inside the institution? I'm going to turn now to Melvyn Bragg. And Melvyn, of course, you have for many years been a BBC broadcaster, but you've also done a lot of your creative work for other broadcasters who do not have a similar set of arrangements to the BBC. So can you talk to us a little bit about how it has been to be a creative working in these rather different environments?
Thank you. I rather feel I'm here for contrast. I'm here to talk as a programme maker. I'm very happy to talk about ITV, Channel 4, Tyne Tees and Sky in your questions afterwards, but I'd like to concentrate the short time I have, I hope it's shorter than 8 minutes, on the BBC, because it's something I think is the most important question around. I joined the BBC in 1961, one way and another. I've worked there ever since. I've also worked with many other television outfits, as has been said here, and in other parts of the world. I've never wavered in my conviction that the BBC is the finest broadcaster there is, and what else in this country can we say that as confidently, and deserves all the support we can possibly give it. A week or so ago, the House of Lords Select Communications Committee issued a pre-charter report on the BBC. Until recently, I was a member of that committee. Its research was exceptionally thorough, its composition cross-party and rigorous in its questioning of the many experts called before it. This most recent report, which you might have missed, I noticed no whoops of joy in the press, was overwhelmingly in support of the BBC. He did not believe that, quote, the scale and scope of the BBC should be cut back. Lord Best, chairman, called it, quote, the envy of countries all over the world. The committee was not opposed to an independent regulator or to propose changes to the licence fee as long as they were openly discussed. It deplored the government bullying that it saw in the demand that the BBC pay for the government's social policy and give licence fee payers money to everyone over the age of 75, so they need to pay a licence fee. It recommended no more cuts to news and other vital services. And as I say, it's been largely ignored. Let me re-emphasise that from my own direct experience, this would have been researched to within an inch of its life. But still the pack cries go to cut down, cut back, bring death by 1,000 cuts to the BBC. Democracy is an odd business. There are problems, both of the BBC's own making and because of the changing nature of global broadcasting. Currently, I write and present In Our Time on Radio 4. It reaches a domestic audience of about 2.3 million. It engages academics of the highest possible calibre, bringing all their erudition to bear on an eclectic range of subjects. For the response it gets, email, Twitter and all the rest of it, both here and around the world from over 48 countries, it's widely appreciated to the extent it would be embarrassing to quote remarks that come from north of China while we're on the air, Toronto, Hawaii, all over the USA and India, and most intensively from this country. This is entirely due to the BBC setting itself the highest standards, engaging with the finest academics in this country and often abroad, and delivering a conversational seminar which is now widely used for teaching in universities. The reason I stress this isn't to do with myself, but it's because I'm just an enabler. Not with the producer, currently Simon Tillotson, but to point out that this BBC is precisely the BBC I encountered when I joined it in 1961. Nothing has changed. In the early 60s, I had the great fortune to work in radio with Lou McNeice on Goethe's Faust, with Douglas Cleverton, who had commissioned Under Milkwood on a play written by Ted Hughes. What's happening in my neck of the woods now on Radio 4, more than 50 years on, comes out of the same determination. Able and well-educated producers and presenters have been given their very best shot to the British public in a public service manner. That's rarely spoken about. That's the side of the argument that it could be heard much more strongly. To work at the BBC is to be given unparalleled opportunities to broadcast to, without interference from any sort of ads or whatever they are, broadcast to and to serve the British public. This is enough for most people in most decades in its existence. Now the idea of the public service in all throughout the state sector, not only in broadcasting, is being undermined with worrying consequences that we see all around us. The BBC, partly to the intrusion of the ITV culture of my good friends John Burt and Greg Dyke, began to see itself akin to a huge commercial enterprise, which is superficially attractive as a proposition, but fundamentally mistaken. But such an enterprise, commercial enterprise, demands competitive payment, competitive with those in the free market world. This, in my view, began to corrode the notion of public service broadcasting. Free market broadcasting became the name of the game. Pension funds soared into the millions, wages up top tipped the million mark, redundancy fees were worthy of the City of London, and the culture of the BBC hierarchy, according to well-informed observers, did change. It became hermetic, and in the opinion of many people, too self-serving and too far from the programmes, and the BBC is only the sum of its programmes. The second and the greater anxiety for the BBC is the force of increased global opposition. In drama, for instance, America is increasingly able to outspend and massively the BBC. In sports rights, similarly, non-BBC companies like Sky and BT are parking its tanks, they have parked their tanks on the BBC lawns, and on it will go. The BBC is slowly being forced to be a small player, and therefore all attempts to curtail it will damage its worldwide reputation and its great inherited strength. There is still great quality in the BBC, but talent goes where there's the arts, any sort of art, talent goes where the money is. The BBC licence fee should be increased. So where are we? We still have the best loved channel on British television, in the BBC, and a reputation without parallel on BBC Radio. What I've pointed out are the dangers present and to come. It's the public, critics and viewers who will save the BBC in the sense of keeping it intact as an adequately supported broadcasting system, able to compete not only on the domestic but also on the world stage. We live in a country which is fearful of losing its identity. 1,000 years ago there was a debate on what was called the matter of Britain. It's come around again, as these things do, especially in an island with profoundly rich traditions and a persistent need to re-examine itself. It's not too much to ask, what is the matter of Britain now? In my view, the BBC above all, more than the monarchy, more than Westminster, more than Whitehall, represents and is able most clearly to define the matter of this troubled, divisive, invented, extraordinary immigrant country. We cannot afford to see it weaken. I see no public marches on the street against the BBC. I've talked about the BBC on many platforms over the last few months, and any time there's been a vote taken, it's been overwhelmingly for the BBC. The BBC isn't the enemy of the British people. For many, it is its compass. For others, it's a comfort. And for most people, it's a deeply seated, seamed factor of continuity in this country. In a time of global gobbling, the individuation of the BBC has never been more urgently needed by those who live here. For almost a century now, we've made and moulded the BBC into an image of the Britain that we are, for better and for worse, you may say. But without any question, in my view, it is unique and ours, and a binding union between the people and its greatest broadcaster. Thank you.
Melvyn, thank you very much indeed for that those very stirring words. Thank you. Of all the many things you've said there, one that I'd just like to highlight for this audience is I love the fact that you're emphasising the role of radio, because I'm never sure that radio really gets enough of a look in the great debates about the BBC. But I love the idea of people in North China listening to In Our Time. That's a very, very good image which we'll all keep in our minds. Melvyn, I wonder if you'd like to kick us off. Would you like to talk to us a bit about this question of how it has been doing creative work other than at the BBC, and whether you think actually the freedom that the BBC has really makes a difference in that sort of work. Do you want to just sort of talk to us about the South Bank show, I suppose, is what I mean.
Yeah, it's a little bit... All right. The fact is that until quite recently, and there wasn't much difference, as Tony will know, and anybody who's working in broadcasting will know, this government put, as it were, to cut to the chase and take a shortcut, public service obligations on independent television. And they worked remarkably well. Granada Television, for instance, in the 1980s and 90s was voted by American journalists as the best broadcasting organisation in the world, above the BBC there. They did great documentaries, they did great natural history programmes, they did marvellous drama. Jim McGovern was there, Almost Equal Cracker and so on. They did good news bulletins. They were a magnificent programme. LWT, where I worked, we did 26, 30 arts programmes a year. We did religious programmes, we did children's programmes, we did Weekend World, we did top-class drama, which wouldn't necessarily get big audiences. We did that too. We did it because we were constrained to do it. regulation worked. They said we had to have that amount of stuff in those proportions on those channels. That's why we did it. And we flooded in there and loved to do it. And we gave the BBC a very good run for their money. And in the news too. And we gypped them up and then they gypped us up. And it was a very healthy competition between the two. As long as there was regulation. As soon as that was lifted, it drained away. We used to do about 30 arts programmes for ITV, and now they do 4, and it's really stretching the word to call them arts programmes. It's PALS programmes of the bloke who used to run it. I'm not being sarcastic. Look at the schedules. And kids programmes have gone, religious programmes have nearly gone, big documentaries have gone, except if they're sensational documentaries, not sort of about how we live, but how extreme we can live and how many audience we can get to watch us in our extreme situations. And it's to do with the absence of regulation. And I don't know what to do about it. It's far too much to ask your good self and your colleagues on either side of the house to bring that back, but that was the loss. And it was the loss to the viewer. Because when we went, just to choose I'm sorry to have to return to my own example, but you asked me. When we went, when South Bank Show went, 60% of arts programmes went from the 2 main channels. We were slightly ahead of the BBC in the number at that time. 60% went. And then the BBC trimmed its arts programme, brought them down in number. Very good they are, but there are fewer than they were. And the whole idea, having to do these programmes, and therefore getting people in who wanted to do them and did them, in my view, all over the place, to a tremendously high level. Wonderful Yorkshire documentaries, absolutely terrific. World in Action, one of the best political programmes ever been on Granada television. Weekend World, has there been a more thoughtful political programme? Oh no, because they had to do it. They brought in the Brian Waltons and John Birds and all those people who were brilliant at what they did. That's been the big change. In terms of working, we do a South Bank Show for Sky Arts now, and it's not very different from working for ITV. They leave us alone, editorially, which is the thing I most want. They don't grumble about our subjects. If they do, we argue them through it. We're on a different system. There's lots of ads, which all programme makers take a view on. But doing the programme, and they do them, and I'm very pleased they do them, and for us to do an art channel on Sky Arts is a bold step. I don't think it's a fig leaf. They've been doing it for many years now. They're trying to make it work. On the other hand, because people have to pay, they're not the great audience harvesters that you get at BBC One, BBC Two and ITV, where you walked out next morning, people said, saw that, didn't like it very much, or whatever they said. One of the greatnesses about broadcasting is broadcasting. You throw your seeds out. You plough your fields and scatter. People are just walking past and they see it on the telly. It's an innocent thing in the corner. It's like the switch that puts on the light. It's of no significance, importance or privilege. That's the great thing about it. And being used in this random, accidental way brings in viewers after viewers after viewers who'd never watched stuff they then take to. And the letters we get, all of us, and that's every producer I know in all these areas, is from people who didn't know that and didn't know that, had left school at 16, had left school at 22, didn't know that and found it through that way. Now that drive has gone, and it's gone because regulation dropped its guard. How you get that back, I don't know. I don't know, it'll be a lifetime, and even then I don't think it would be enough. But it's a loss, which makes it even more important that the BBC's reinforced in its continuing purpose, which is to do what we set out to do, but to change it for the modern world. In terms of the differences of working, right? No different. The document in that time, it wasn't a golden age, or it was a good age. In that time, people like Dennis Potter moved from ITV to BBC, Channel 4 and back again. So did Ken Loach, so did Jimmy McGovern. It was one thing. It isn't anymore. Certain areas have thrived, you think? Light entertainment, although I don't know. I miss Morecambe and Wise. Who knows? I think the culture has become a different culture. That's why the BBC is so vital. If you believe as I do, if you think as I do, we need to talk an act of faith. It isn't a religion, although it is a binding force in this country, without any question. BBC reach out for the BBC. People reach out to the BBC as the answer to what makes this country good. They'll reach out for it. But because it is something that we can deliver, which has never been delivered before in the history of civilization. This is civilization. I mean, it's very nice to look in the past. I look in the past, we all look in the past. Myself, walk around London, go to wonderful places and see wonderful. This is the greatest thing that has ever happened in civilization, which is the technical capacity to reach a global audience with information at one stage until quite recently, just 6 or 7 years ago, was limited to a tiny, self-selected audience. It now goes everywhere. And if people want to watch it or want to listen to it, they can. It's even better now because they can record it on their wristwatches and they can see it 6 months later when they're in the Sahara, in a frying pan, which they do. It's massive what's happening now. And I think that we haven't really appreciated what a time we live in. I mean, when people woke up in Florence in the 14th century, they didn't say, oops, we're living in the Renaissance, so we better make the best of it. But actually, we can wake up and say, we live in a time when there's television, because many people think there wasn't television. We didn't have television. Some people in this room would not have had television when they were young. It came in late, and so on, in their houses. But it's arrived. And the BBC makes the best of it. And I think it must not only be defended at all costs, I'm shut up now, I think it should be built up. I think we should help it to get off the back foot. It is magnificent and it is elite. If it kicks in harder, the other companies will come in. Look at the drama that's coming out of ITV now. It's very good. Why? Because the BBC drama became better and better. That's why it's good. Because it's like that. Is the news getting better here? Yeah. Why? Because the other bloke's doing news better. That's why. That's how it works. And it's a virtuous spiral if it gets going. Anyway, that's it.
Melvyn, thanks. That's a great defence of competition, actually, Melvyn, which I'm
Well, I was
delighted
taking up on
to
my
hear.
friend.
Yeah, it's all good. Thank you very much. No, we're all good.